Scott, you reviewed 2 zombie games last week. We'll get to the plants later on.
That didn't even click in my brain that they were both technically zombie games. Wow, that's weird that I never put those two together. But yeah, you're exactly right.
You didn't realize that you were hired as our zombie enthusiast.
Apparently. Yeah, well, in my defense, they're extremely different games. I mean, PvZ is obviously like very like cute and funny and family friendly. Dying Light is very like, it's bleak, especially like for anybody that's finished the DLC. Like, you know exactly how bleak it gets. It's pretty intense.
Cool.
But they're both great for different reasons. I really enjoyed both of them, honestly.
The following got an 8 out of 10 on GameSpot. Interesting looking expansion. I remember a couple of months ago they like put the price up because they'd been like adding so much to it. So it's $19.99 now. It's like a fully fledged kind of like, almost feels like a standalone thing. Very different what they've done. They've you know, for a game about parkour, it's basically out in the middle of the countryside.
Yeah. So like for anybody that didn't play the original, it was based primarily on like a parkour traversal system. It was, you know, weapon crafting and zombie killing and parkour. And now this DLC is, hey, you have a customizable buggy and can just drive around the countryside, which feels like the antithesis of parkouring through buildings and stuff. So kind of a weird design decision, which is why it's kind of amazing that it works so well. Like, not only do the driving mechanics themselves actually function beautifully, it melds with the existing gameplay really well. I mean, it builds on the existing weapon crafting system, so like that all feels very familiar. It all just kind of works in a way, and it ends up being super fun.
So what's it like, sort of, I guess you need to have a good driving model for a game that's going to be set outside in the wilderness. What's it like traversing that big open area? What's the buggy feel like? There's like upgrades and whatnot for it as well?
Yeah, that's actually sort of the best part. So to be clear, Dying Light is not a standalone. It has enough content that it could have been, but it is an expansion to the existing game, so you carry everything that you earned in the original game into the DLC. So that means that if you play to the end of Dying Light, you're pretty much all the way leveled up. So the nice thing about the DLC is it gives you this new skill tree to level up, so you have something to work towards, and that skill tree is your buggy. So you're earning upgrades, you're adding stuff to it, you're like equipping it with flamethrowers and UV headlights, which stun zombies, things like that. So that whole process of building up your buggy is super satisfying. But it also maintains the sort of survival element of like you have to go out and scavenge for gas and scavenge for parts, and you know your buggy will deteriorate the more you drive it, and you have to keep it running. So again, that's part of why it all melts together and works so well with the existing experience. So yeah, upgrades, awesome. Flamethrowers, awesome.
It's weird because I was playing Mad Max over the holiday break, and I also play Half-Life 2 basically every year, and this kind of felt, I played a little bit of this, and it felt like the Highway 17 levels of Half-Life 2 mixed with this like you're saying, collecting all this resources.
No, absolutely. I was actually talking with somebody. I think that was even a line in the review at one point that ended up getting cut, that it's sort of a better Mad Max than Mad Max.
Right, yeah.
Because it actually has like the survival elements and the satisfaction of building up the car and making it your own is actually sort of better than it was in the Mad Max game, which was not a terrible game, but this DLC kind of nails it without really necessarily aiming for that. It just kind of, like I said, fits with the existing experience and just becomes Mad Max on accident.
Yeah. A game that you loved.
That was actually the very first lobby I ever watched, because I remember being like, oh yeah, the Peter Brown guy, he's got a good head and shoulders. Feel bad because everyone in the comments hates him.
I've since gone back and played Mad Max, because I hadn't played Mad Max. You gave it, I think, 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like I'm totally with you. Like it's a totally competent game that's like,
It looks really pretty. The driving was really fun, but the sort of stuff you're describing about the buggy, which should be this sort of like organic relationship with your car, so you really grow attached to it. The game like forced objectives through forced upgrades.
Right.
So you were like, I have to upgrade my buggy this way or that way to continue the story, and it just felt so prescribed and clinical. It was like, I don't know. And even the resource gathering in Mad Max was not that imperative to your success, I found.
Yeah.
But you know, whatever. I mean, it's cool to see that Dying Light did so well, especially because it's so different. And they've even said now that in 2016 they're going to make more content for the game,
right?
Because the following has just done so well for them.
Yeah, it should. I mean, it's one of my favorite pieces of DLC, like maybe ever. It just because it does something that's both new. I mean, the way I phrased it in the reviews, it's at once distinct from and in sync with the original experience. I think that's what makes it so impressive.
Yeah,
that it does something new and it works and it feels natural. Like all of those elements combined with something that's just fun, like driving around and mowing down zombies. Like, I don't really know what more you could want out of DLC.
Yeah, I mean, DLC usually just like adds something to, you know, a sort of a base game that's like just complementary almost, or fits in really neatly. Whereas this almost seems like they just had this whole idea, a different game.
They're just like, screw it, let's just do this, and it works. I mean, it wasn't perfect. It still got an 8 out of 10, but I mean, I highly recommend it. An 8 out of 10 in my mind is like an excellent score.
What was the combat like, considering like this was a game that was based around melee combat, like that really difficult sort of, in Dying Light when you use weapons, they break apart, especially at the start when you haven't sort of upgraded your character's ability to like, I don't know, the durability of the weapons. Like stuff falls apart really quickly. What's it like suddenly having a card you can basically just mow down zombies in?
Well, like I said, so the car does break down too. So you're not completely off the hook. Like the more you drive off road and the more zombies you hit, like things will just start to fall apart to the point that eventually your buggy will just like not be drivable anymore if you're not repairing it actively. So it doesn't make the game like too easy. It doesn't really break the game. And really the new setting kind of changes the way you have to approach combat. Because you're right, in the original game it was very melee focused. You were very up close and personal. And in this, having so much space, it means both not having cover anymore, not having a convenient means of escape. You can't just like climb up on a van and like be above the fray and find a way out. You actually have no choice but to engage the zombies that are after you, or to like get in your buggy and run. So it does change the way you approach combat. So you end up using ranged weapons a lot more. There's this great tactical crossbow you get as you play through the DLC that's phenomenal. But also, if you still have any firearms from the original game, those work great. Highly recommend them. They're much safer than trying to melee like a huge horde of zombies that you can't get away from anymore. So yeah, it fundamentally changes the way you approach combat without actually doing any, like introducing any new combat mechanics.
Right.
Which is another reason that I think the DLC works so well.
Yeah, it's really quite an achievement. Thanks to everyone who's been sending in questions via the chat. Yes, as you can see, the folks in the back are just throwing up all your questions. So please, by all means, get them in there. At Daniel Dwyer, if you want me to see them here on my laptop as well. Let's talk briefly about, without getting too much into the story stuff. How is the story? Does it pay off?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some comments, so I don't want to spoil the ending because it really goes in like a pretty gnarly direction. A lot of people really hated it. I admire that they made a bold choice with the way they wrap it up, but the premise is
Donald Trump's president at the end.
Yes.
Great.
It's terrifying.
Zombie Donald Trump.
Divisive.
Yeah.
No, so Donald Trump.
Zombie.
Oh, yes, fair enough.
Speaking of brains. Let's see. Oh, cult. Yeah. So the basic premise is at the end of Dying Light, for anybody who hasn't finished it, like you're still in a city overrun with zombies. Like I won't spoil how that game wraps up, but at the end of the game, like you're still in a city. There are still zombies. So this DLC starts with a random person from outside of town showing up and being like, hey, there's a way out. And by the way, there's also a place where people are immune to this epidemic. Okay, I'm going to die now. And then he dies. And you take his map and find your way out. And then you're suddenly in the countryside. And you discover that there's like this whole cult situation, and you have to infiltrate the cult to try to figure out how people are like immune to the zombie virus.
And you have like a standing with them?
You basically have to earn their trust because they're very mistrustful of outsiders. They don't know who you are. They don't, want to reveal anything to you. And of course, like the whole rabbit hole of this cult, the whole conspiracy goes very deep, and so you just peel back, the onion layers. But so that does mean, and this is one of my biggest problems with the DLC actually, you end up doing a lot of just fetch quests as favors to earn trust. It's like, oh, gee whiz, I don't want to tell you about this thing, so why don't you go talk to this guy on the opposite side of the map for no reason?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, which is unfortunate. But in terms of narrative payoff, it does actually work. Like, it's annoying having to do so many fetch quests, but at least there's a compelling reason to do them. And like, there is sort of a payoff, and it does kind of go somewhere. And I appreciate that it becomes a conspiracy thriller rather than just a generic, oh, there are zombies, we have to kill them, survive. Like every other zombie game. So it's a pretty novel approach for an apocalypse style setting, which is cool.
I was thinking it'd be great if there was a zombie game where you had to try your best to actually get bitten, but the zombies just don't want anything to do with you. So you're like going out of your way, like
zombie dating sim.
Come on. Yeah.
It's like Driver. Every time you try and knock somebody down, they just go, whoop, get out of the way. Before we wrap this up, I got some questions from the chat coming in here. Mammoth EU saying, Dying Light, the following is exactly what DLC should look like. Such great value for money. It is $19.99. I know it's $60 with the base game as well they're selling.
Yeah, so actually there's a special edition, like definitive edition of the entire game that you can buy for $60, which does include the following DLC. So if you never played the original, that's probably your best bet because you can upgrade and play through the original game and then carry all that into the DLC, and it's all in one convenient package.
Cool. Shooty78 says, how long is the following?
The guy's name is Shooty78?
Shooty78.
That's awesome. I guess he likes shooters.
He's 30-something years old. 38.
Math.
Yeah, math.
Yeah. We're editors.
We do shooting.
Words, not numbers.
Scores
are dumb. Words are great. So, you can beat the sort of campaign of the DLC in probably about 10 hours.
Okay.
So it's pretty substantial, but there's also plenty of stuff to just go and find. Like people are already uncovering all these Easter eggs all throughout the world map. So you can just kind of drive around and focus on finding upgrades and crafting stuff and discovering hidden areas, things like that. So all things considered for completionists, like there's probably like 20 hours of content to this DLC, which is substantial.
And last question here from Lord the LMV. Is parkour still a big part of the game?
Yeah, actually. So, I mean, you spend a lot of time commuting between locations, but once you get to those locations, very often there is room to kind of parkour, and you can still incorporate it in combat. Like there are boss encounters that happen in like kind of enclosed areas, and if you're good at parkour, you can use that to your advantage to, you know, avoid dying. And co-op is still a thing, by the way, for anybody that's wondering. You can still play all of this in co-op.
Cool.
Your buddies can actually jump on the back of your buggy and you can like ride around a buggy together. It's great.
Your very own chum bucket.
Yeah. You can just kick them off and keep driving as a distraction, right? You don't have to outrun the bears. You can outrun the guy next to you. Bear, zombie, you know.
Nice.
So yeah.
I like it. That's it. Dying Light the Following. It's out. It's been out already, but it's out now on PC, I guess.
On PC, or let's see, PC, Xbox One, and PS4.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, I forgot it was out on consoles.
One of those games.
Looks really good as well.
It
Still
does.
Looks good.
It really does, yeah. And actually, the new setting allows it to, so I mean, it's bright and there's coastline and water. It's very nice. It's very pretty.
Super good. Thanks so much, Scott.
Absolutely.
Talk to you, Scott.